Hi, I'm Ben Lucas, TI-94000 of the 501st Garrison Titan, and this is R3M3, the MSE-6 repair droid, or for short, Remy the Mouse Droid. This video is for anyone who's interested in making something cool, like this mouse droid, every time, but feels like it's outside their skill set, or maybe you just don't know where to start. Hopefully this video inspires you to pick up that project, and if you want to make a mouse droid too, should point you in the right direction. So if this is your first time making a droid, or your first time watching this video, I do encourage you to watch the whole thing. However, if you need to skip to a certain part, check the description where I bookmarked all the time codes to the important sections of this video. Also down below, you'll find links to some of the items that I mentioned throughout. So as a quick introduction, part of the rules surrounding building things with Lucasfilm licensed Star Wars clubs is that none of the information can be public. So if you're frustrated by everything being hidden in the forums or pointing back to the forums, that's actually the reason. In this video, I'm going to try to point back to the forums as little as possible, but there are still some things that you can only get from there. It's free to sign up for an account, and you can do it no matter where you live. If you're already familiar with 501st rules, you might ask who approves my droid. The answer is, no one does. No one has to approve your droid for trooping. If it's an official canon troop, think before you bring it. Otherwise, just have fun with it. So, first, let's talk about your priorities. What can you expect in this video? Why do you want to build this project? What resources do you have available to you? Do you have more time, or do you have more money? Are you skilled at DIY, or would you rather pay for convenience? Do you want something that's 100% screen accurate, or are you okay cutting corners if it makes life easier, if it makes things faster, cheaper, you don't have the skills? You have to answer these questions for yourself, and depending on your answers, your build is going to look different than mine, so please keep that in mind as you watch this video. This is not the holy grail of how to do this build. This is not complete A to Z of how to do this build. This is my experience, and I'll walk you through my decisions as I pick out the parts. Personally, I'm not skilled at building or coding. I've never done anything like this before. I'm a self-employed photographer. I don't have a lot of spare cash lying around. If I could find a way to do it cheaper while still having a very fun and reliable quality product in the end, I was happy with that. For me, the fun of this project is having the droid, driving it around, bringing smiles to kids' faces, not necessarily the process of making it. I did enjoy the work that I put into it, because now I can say, I built this. But I am also very happy to have the project finished. That said, when you do a project like this, you are never truly finished. There will be tweaking, there will be sanding, repainting, upgrades, and you'll want to add one more thing to make it just a little bit better. It's always one more thing. For instance, I added these rubber strips to mine. I call them racing bumpers, so I can drive around faster than I would otherwise be comfortable with on my first troop, and it won't scratch anything that I happen to bump into. So keep that in mind, and let's dive right in. If you've already begun your research, you may have come across some lingo that you don't understand. I want to define a few of these pieces for you before we start. So the first one is servo. Servo is the steering on your RC car. Next one is trim. Trim determines what straightforward or neutral is on your steering. If you drive straight forward but it veers left or right, then you can change that by adjusting the trim. Escape, or actually ESC, it actually stands for Electronic Speed Control. If you get a Traxxas Bandit, it's the little blue box right here in the back. ABS versus PLA. These are two kinds of different plastic. They have different properties when cutting or sanding. In general, PLA is easier to work with, but has a lower melting temperature. I specifically requested that all of my 3D printed parts are printed in ABS so that it doesn't melt in the hot car or out during a summer parade. If you live in a hotter part, take that into consideration. A lot of my parts are 3D printed because, at least for me, it's easily accessible and I have a lot of friends with printers. It's really cheap compared to the alternative methods. Greeblies. A greebly is a fine detailing added to the surface of a larger object to make it appear more complex and therefore more visually interesting. The Star Wars universe, and movie making in general, is full of greeblies. This is a term you will hear a lot. Shadow. Shadow is actually an acronym that stands for Small Handheld Arduino Droid Operating Wand. Catchy. I know. The first version of this system was developed for the astromech droids, the R2-D2s, and it is called Padawan. Most of the Shadow System information is not actually on the Mouse Droid forum, it's actually on the astromech forum. So I would actually encourage you to go sign up for that forum as well. A link to that specific post is in the description. PCB. Printed circuit board, in this case, PCB that we use is this green one here. It takes all of the pins from the Arduino that you would otherwise need to solder, and then it routes them all to one central, easy-to-pin location. 100% worth buying one. It's less than 20 bucks. I don't have a link for that since they're all custom-ordered runs, but you can easily find them on the Mouse Droid forums. Alright, let's talk parts. Someone said, can I buy everything I need on Amazon? Well, I guess that's technically true. Most of it, anyway. With a project like this, you don't just buy all your parts at once. You'll buy some of the things, figure out what you need next, and then you keep buying more things. It's actually important to keep this in mind so you don't get discouraged after your 15th Amazon box arrives. The parts that you need come in about 4 different categories. Aesthetics, the car itself, batteries, and then optional electronics. Aesthetics. This is pretty much the thing determining if you are screen accurate or not. But the cost can vary widely depending on how you want to do it. The original Mouse Droid had foam tires. That doesn't seem reliable or practical to me, so I didn't want to do that. It has complicated circuit boards and transistors and stuff that make up all the greeblies. For me, it was a lot easier, cheaper, and faster to 3D print all of those parts. So it's not technically screen accurate, but I think it looks pretty darn good. And again, for me, that's priority is fun. So if I'm worried about a transistor falling off or, oh no, that one's out of place, I'm not having fun with the kids. Next is the car itself. There are a lot of different options, but the most popular one to buy is the Traxxas Bandit. This car has the correct dimensions. It's over-engineered to handle the excessive amount of weight you're going to put on it. This is about 11 pounds. And it has a large variety of replaceable parts and optional upgrades that you can purchase later. By far the most expensive part of this build, but it doesn't break down as easily and it works out of the box. In my opinion, 100% worth it. Batteries. 2 options here. You can buy the Traxxas branded batteries and be done with it. Or you can go with a slightly more convoluted option that in practice actually works exactly the same but at half the price. So links are below to what I bought. I bought an 8,000 milliamp battery, which lasts about 4 hours going full throttle in my experience. A Barrell to XT60 connector, a Turnigy power charger, XT60 to 5.5 millimeter adapter, a 105 watt 12 volt charger, and then finally an XT60 to Traxxas connector, which is at the end here. So all these chained together, it's really easy to use, you just have to buy a bunch of small parts. Optional electronics. This is where you add in the Shadow System, the MP3 trigger, or anything else you want to do. You don't actually have to have any of this to run around and have fun. I did a very minimal Shadow build so that I could turn the large 2-handed controller into a small 1-handed controller that also gives me sound trigger abilities. So I will come back to, at the end of this video, how exactly Shadow works, but sky's the limit for all of this. I've seen hydraulic lifts, LED lights, disco balls. If you can think of it, you can do it. So let's talk about the shell building. All right, and all of the foam is going to disappear in 3, 2... Look at that, all the foam. All right, so when you get the car, all you have to do is strip off the top plastic. It's super easy. And then a lot of people have questions on how to mount it to the shell. One of the frustrations that I had with the forum is that no one actually shows you how to do this. They say, and then I finish drawing the rest of the owl, which is obnoxious. So I'm actually going to show you how I did mine. If I were to go back and do this again, I might do it a little bit differently, but this is what I ended up with. So here is the inside of my shell, and then here is the bottom. So it really is just 4 screws drilled through the bottom here. The bottom plastic channel, even though it's lower and deeper, that's where the Traxxas battery would go. But if you're not going to use the Traxxas battery, it doesn't fit anyway. And the reason why I actually had to Dremel all of this out was that I was having problem with the wheel wells hitting the edge. So maybe you can figure out a better way of mounting it than I can. But this is what I came up with. Drill out the center channel. Just put 4 easy screws right there. And also, now you've got a good shot of the ESC right there. And then from the other side, bam. I mean, it's super easy. I've seen a lot of other contraptions to do it. In my brain, this was the easiest way to do it. So that is how I mounted the car to the shell. A couple of other notes in here. I will link these as well. You are going to want to buy some shock spacers. So these guys here, because otherwise what happens is as you're driving, all of the weight of the shell is pressing down on this, and it's going to press those wheels up into the shell, and just the friction, it'll try turning it, but the friction of everything pressing on the wheels won't be able to go anywhere. I picked up, in addition to the shock spacers that came with the car, I picked up 2 more packs of these shock spacers. So there are a lot of them on every tire, but that was kind of the right amount for me and the amount of stuff I did. Alright, so now you have a pretty good idea of how to connect the car to the shell, and honestly, once you do the pretty part and connect the car to it, you're done. Everything else is optional to the level that you want to do. So you can definitely drive this around, and it's good to go. So let me show you how I did the shell. So mine came from Granite Earth. I know there are a couple other people in the forums as well that you can do. You will have to go to the forum to find that link, unfortunately. So here, I mean, it's just, I just screwed things in. One thing that I will be adding is I will actually be cutting out a big hole here because my speaker is pretty muffled when it comes through the shell. So that will just help get some of the sound out from the speaker. They're pretty easy to attach. The screws are a custom screw pretty much that I had to find. The only place I could find it was Tacoma Screw, which is here in Seattle. But I believe it was a 1 3/4 inch, like number 4, number 6. It was really skinny. Depending on the size of your barrel threads, these here, whatever fits in there for you, it's going to be different depending on your printer and your settings and how big you make these. But yeah, it was all pretty easy. These I think got like 1 coat of paint. These got maybe 2. And yeah, I'm going to be cutting holes here, but otherwise it's just screwed in. Like, this is all pretty easy. I do have a couple of friends that did some really neato magnet attachments for this, and honestly that makes it help fit a bin better. It's really cool to do. It's just a little more complicated, and I didn't get around to doing that. So you can go easy, or the magnets actually will allow you to pull these off. I could make another one for like a GoPro attachment, disco ball, party mouse, you know. Sky's the limit on that. So here's the shell. I mean, honestly, you trim the shell, you add your 2 top greeblies, you add your side greeblies. If you want to go simple, you're done. If you want to know how to make these more screen accurate, there's a lot of different places in the forum. So many people have done those builds and shown you the daughter boards and the transistors and how exactly all that stuff mounts. I didn't do any of that, so I can't show you any of that. So now let's get to the complicated optional part. Let's talk about the shadow building. So the shadow system. People have asked what parts are required. So let's start here. Unplug these so I can show them to you one at a time here. Bottom here is an Arduino Uno. It takes up about 96% of the space of an Arduino Uno, so it's the perfect size. And then I've got the USB shield right there, and then a Bluetooth adapter. The Bluetooth is how you connect this to it. So, of course, I have a PS3 controller. I actually gutted it for a bigger battery. There's a link to those batteries down as well, so this lasts forever. The Bluetooth, I haven't tested the range, but it's supposed to be, you know, an insane amount of range, and honestly, I don't want to let this out of my line of sight anyway. And then this PCB, this was custom printed. It brings all of these outside pins into these 3 center pins. Something very, very important. I was testing this, it was turning on, it was lighting up, it would not throttle, it would not steer. I was getting a blinking green light on the Traxxas, which, according to the manual, says the trim is not set. What was actually happening is I had just set this on top. I had not soldered them yet. So it was getting power and turning on, but it didn't have enough power to actually do something. So solder every connection. That's something that, if you're new, people won't tell you because they'll assume that you knew that. So solder all the connections. So what I have here is I've got 1 wire soldered in here. So I'm pulling a 5-volt connection from this board. And again, this is plugged into, it's just running off the Traxxas battery through these center pins. And then I clipped the battery that actually came with the sound amp for that. So this is my power supply for the sound amp. So this is a voice amp that, again, I have a link to in the description. Is a 20-watt speaker and amp, which when you shuck the shell and battery, gives you a nice little loud thing. And this is something that all of the R2 Astromechs units use. So if it's good enough for them, it's good enough for me. This sounds great. It's super loud. The only problem that I have with it, again, is not a problem with this. It is a problem with the shell. I didn't cut sound panels. So I'm going to cut those sound panels to let the sound escape. And as soon as I do, this will be super loud and convention ready. I'm so excited for that. And then that plugs into this. So I bought the SparkFun MP3 trigger. So you can buy the smallest, cheapest memory card you can, MicroSD card there. And then how it works is this is your power supply. So I have this running off of this. Something that I didn't know is these 3 actually don't come together. I had to solder in an extra space there. So your ground, and then there's a space, and then there's VCC and RX. Your VCC and RX need to be soldered in with the space and the ground. So that's why there's, see, the black ground is actually on its own. Just audio cable going to the sound amp. This can manually trigger to test that you've done everything correctly before you get the Arduino code all installed. But to solder it, you also have to look up the instructions for this particular model. You have to solder a little switch here to change the power over to pull that 5-volt off the side. So that is that guy. So basically, how it all works is you take your Arduino stack and you plug in everything basically to the center pins on this Arduino stack. So I'm going to do that now. So the motor, where is it? It's labeled. The top one is motor. That is the back one here, coming out of the blue ESC. Black on mine is wired to ground, so it helps if you color coordinate everything. The MP3 trigger is this guy, black to ground. And this guy, let's see, and the bottom one is your servo. So your steering servo is the front one. Black is ground. Alright, so now that I have everything plugged in correctly, I've got this, I've got all my wires, I've got my audio hooked into the amp, I've got steering, I've got throttle, I'm not going to do it right now, and I've got sound. So that is everything. Turn that off. Yeah, so that's all the electronics. A couple of last notes of just useful things. So, putting screws in is honestly just the simplest, easiest way. I I was a lot more scared of cutting and screwing and doing all of this stuff than I should have been. It was actually really easy. I was terrified of making the first cuts on this bottom shell, and yeah, I probably would have cut it a little bit different, but it works, and I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. I mean, I'm going to do some sanding and touch-up paint. I wasn't quite sure how big the wheel wells needed to be because, again, I was having that drag problem. But this, buy some of those Traxxas spacers. That will solve that drag problem. Oh, I completely forgot. These are all held in with magnets. So it's so easy to do this now because then you can just, and then it doesn't come off, and then you can just pop it off when you need to. When this runs into stuff, it still doesn't pop off. These are really strong magnets, which are also linked below. A tip for putting in magnets. Do 2 magnets, put in, test the polarity, and then mark with a Sharpie one of the sides of the magnets, and then you understand where all the magnets are going. The other thing, too, is if you get a large stack of them, and then you can just pop, 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 because actually they will all be the same polarity if you do that with a long stack of magnets. So just a couple of quick tips for doing that. Just sanding down all of your frames. If this ends up bent or warped, it's because your frame is slightly longer or bigger than your shell. So just getting everything sanded and glued. You can use E6000. You can use super glue if you want to. Oh, I painted the wheels. So you unscrew this nut. You can take the whole wheel off. And then I just hit that silver rim with some spray paint. So they're black now and they're not quite as obvious. So now you know enough to start your journey building your very own MSE-6 repair droid, mouse droid. So it's a very fun project to do. I would say the shell and aesthetics and car, if you want to go with the Traxxas Bandit setup, that all roughly costs about $400. The shadow system, buy it at your local GameStop or you know, eBay. They're super cheap. The shadow system costs about $200. The shell itself costs about $400. Extra supplies cost $100. So this is a sub-$1,000 build. It's still kind of expensive, but it's not nearly as expensive as some other droid building can be. And again, sky's the limit. The more electronics you want to put into it, the better sound system you want to put into it. That's all up to you. I wanted to do cheap, quick, and efficient. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I will show you the case shortly here, but please like, subscribe. If you found this useful and want to see any of the other stuff that I do photography tutorials on this channel, so you can check those out. Thank you so much. Right now, I also have a pinup calendar. If you are still watching this and it's 2018 or 2019, then I have a pinup calendar that is probably for sale. Go to galacticapinups.com. If you are watching this video, you are a Star Wars fan, and you will enjoy that. So, if you found this useful, I still have a few of those left. If I have a few of those left, please take one from me. They don't need to be in my living room. So let me show you that case, and thank you so much for watching. This case gives you about 1-inch clearance on either side, basically just enough room to put in a very thin sheet of foam around your mouse. So I probably wouldn't want to fly with this, or I would want to get Pelican case style foam. There's a link to that in the description too if you so desire. But yeah, if you, I have a very small car. If you need something that is small and compact, just fits your mouse and nothing else, this is the bin that I found that is the perfect size for a 100% size mouse. Obviously, if you do the 85% size or bigger or any other additional add-ons, mileage may vary, so you're going to need a different bin. But this is one that I found. A link is in the description. It gives you 1 inch on these two sides, and it gives you 4 to 5 inches on these sides. Enough room that I can put in this case that I picked up for $1 at the Container Store, and this carries my batteries, my battery charger, and the Shadow controller. So again, thank you so much for watching. I do hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you're inspired to now build your own mouse droid. If you have any questions, as much as I would love to say leave a comment, that's probably not the best place because I won't see them or I won't be able to answer your questions. So if you have a question, there is a link to the main Facebook droid building group. Please go there, ask your questions. Of course, you can ask questions in the forum. I find Facebook a little bit faster and more responsive. People are on Facebook all the time. But the forums are really the official spot to learn everything. So, thank you so much for watching. Go ahead and get a calendar if you are so interested. And if you have any questions, see you in the forums.